What's going on YouTube? Aaron here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over something that likely has been gone over by a lot of other channels and other news networks, but I personally haven't gone deep and dove into this subject, and that is around Brian's trip home somewhere at the end of August. We know that he was reported to be back in Northport on September 1st. And the last time we heard anything with Brian prior to that was being picked up by Miranda Baker, the TikToker, on August 29th at Coulter Bay in Wyoming. So somewhere between August 29th and September 1st, which is just a few short days, Brian would have had to do this by himself in the van. And that is a very lengthy trip across the majority of the country. We're going from, upper northwest kind of area all the way down to the southeast part of the country in, western central Florida where his parents lived. So, I started to look at this and I thought about what sticks out the most to me about this besides the fact that this is a 2,000 plus mile trip. And that is, not the construction along the way. That may have been an issue. But the amount of times that Brian or anybody, regardless of your car, would have to stop on this trip. It would be amazing if we had a tank that could last 2,365 miles if you filled it all the way full. But that's just not the case. So I thought, man, he probably had to stop quite a few times. And we know that I think the bank situation where he used Gabby's card, I think was in Missouri or Illinois. And this likely would have been his route because we also know he wasn't taking back roads. He was taking major highways. He was taking major interstates because he just wouldn't have been able to get back to Florida by the 1st had he gone discreet and tried to not show up on traffic cams and whatever. So I decided to look into, and obviously we all know that they were driving a 2012 Ford Transit van. And so I looked more into detail about the specifics when it comes to gas with that vehicle. And I found that the tank size is a 15.4 gallon tank. So if you fill that thing up, I thought, how far could you drive? And everything online that I was seeing was saying that it's anywhere between 23 and 25 miles per gallon on the highway and interstate on the 2012 Ford Transit. So I decided to go with this 23 number as a safe number, and I times that by 15 because we know that 15.4 gallons is the size of the tank. And just having a nice round number at 15. He likely wasn't taking the car down all the way to empty and just barely making it to each gas station. So using 15 as a nice round number and timesing that by 23, we get 345 miles per full tank of gas that you could drive in the 2012 van. So then I thought, okay, let's divide that by the 2,365 miles divided by 345 to get the amount of times that Brian would have to stop to fill the tank full again. And that came out to about 6.85 times that he would have had to stop. So once again, we're going to kind of round that up to 7 just as a nice round number. And assuming, so this is where I'm just purely speculating, assuming he got gas in this area or left the Teton area with a pretty full tank of gas or a full tank of gas, I decided let's go through and assuming that that's the case, let's see where he would have likely stopped along this route all the way to Northport. So I broke it into 7 345-ish mile sections. And the first one takes us from the Grand Teton area, the Spread Creek area. And like I said, if he had had a full tank of gas, he would have gotten roughly to Laramie, Wyoming. And that is a 349-mile leg of the trip. You can see it right up here. You'll also see it on these little tags. I know it's kind of hard to read. So I'm just going to go through these very quickly, and then we'll talk about it a little bit after. And it's saying on here it would have taken him roughly 5.5 hours to get there on that first leg. So let's just assume he filled up in Laramie full to the brim and drove another 345-ish miles. We got it at 348. Takes him to roughly the Elm Creek area in south central Nebraska. So he's already from the far northwest corner of Wyoming. Just 2 full tanks of gas gets him to the center of the U.S. In southern Nebraska. The next full tank of gas would have taken him from Elm Creek or around that area roughly to the Kansas City area. So 344 miles, almost 345 on the dot, would take him roughly somewhere along I-435 right here. He could have pulled over and gotten some gas right in this area. Who knows? Wouldn't it be nice to know every place he stopped? And then from there, along, and once again, like I said, I went back to this same map to he would have gone through Kansas City, right? So I made sure that it was following that same map. But from Kansas City, another full tank could have gotten him roughly to West Frankfort, Benton area in southern Illinois. So that would have been his, 5th stop or 4th. And then the next one would have gotten him almost to Georgia, but it would have gotten him near and around Chattanooga, Tennessee, roughly 346 miles on that leg of the trip. This next one, a full tank of gas from Chattanooga would almost get a 2012 Ford Transit into Florida, but not quite. It would have gotten him just north of the Florida border. As we can see where my mouse is at, that's where it's at. It would have gotten him to Valdosta, Georgia. So southern Georgia would have been that leg of the trip, 344 miles. And then the last leg would have been his shortest had he had the tank completely full, and it would have gotten him 310 miles the rest of the way to his parents' house in Northport. So this trip, a lot of people talk about this trip and they say, Brian, how was he able to get back to Northport in such a short amount of time? And it is possible to drive through the night and drive into the next day and continue just driving and driving and driving. Google has this at a 35-hour trip. But I think what people get lost on is that driving through the night, like talking about driving through the night and nonstop driving. You hear the words nonstop, but he stopped. He stopped a lot, not just a handful of times. He stopped a handful and a half, right? 7-ish times, and maybe even more, because this was just given that he left the Tetons with a full tank of gas. I would assume that Brian, and look, we're all speculating on what happened with him and Gabby, but I would assume he left the Tetons in a headspace that wasn't like, oh, I'm going on a road trip. Let's make sure to have this thing planned and ready to go. Let's have a full tank. I don't know if he had a full tank when he left. So this is me speculating. Had he left this area with a full tank, this could have been his route all the way back to Florida. But like I said, I don't know. But what people get lost on is the fact that, yeah, he probably drove throughout the night, but he stopped a lot. So it would be very interesting to know truly how many times he had to stop. And like I said, I think that bank card fraud, they got him on that somewhere in near St. Louis or Illinois. But it would just be very interesting to know the exact route and where he potentially stopped. Not that there's a lot of speculation on what happened on his trip home. Not that they're looking into potential other things that he could have done, but it would be interesting to, tune in on some of those gas station security camera footage, or, whatever kind of footage that we could dig up along that route if we truly knew where he stopped each time to fill up, to just kind of peek in and see what did Brian look like when he was filling his tank. Was he calm? Was he anxious? Was he eating a Snickers? Was he, I don't know. The list could go on and on. But it's interesting, right? And so though none of this is new information that I'm breaking, I think it's important to tell people that he stopped a lot on the way home. And so yeah, and like I said at the beginning, we're waiting for new information to come out around this case and about this case. And so the only thing we can do at this point is dive into what we know. And yesterday in my stream, I did just that with their trip. I went through all of their trip from the beginning in Monument Rocks, Kansas, all the way to the Tetons, and eventually to where Brian ended up back in Northport without Gabby. And that's what got me to think about doing this video. I thought, well, let's cover the trip back. But if the video from yesterday, if the stream from yesterday sounds at all interesting to you, go check it out. It's a 3+ hour stream. I go through and I match Instagram photos. I put the drive times between each of their locations. And we talked about a lot of different things throughout the stream. And so if that all sounds interesting to you, go check that out again. I'll be streaming again soon, especially if new information comes out around the notebook or cause of death with Brian. I think we're going to get a lot of information soon. I think we're going to get some more information potentially around Gabby as well, hopefully. But all that said, I hope that this video was at the very least somewhat entertaining. And if it was, please hit the like button on the way out and subscribe. And I will see you guys in a future video or stream. All right, talk soon.